When the empath finally stops pleasing everyone. The shocking truth Carl Jung revealed. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. If you've ever felt exhausted from carrying the emotions of others, or silenced your truth just to keep the peace, this message is for you. Today, we explore what happens when an empath finally chooses themselves not out of spite, but out of spiritual awakening and sacred self-respect. Jung called it individuation, the moment when you stop dissolving into others and start remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Have you reached that point? Comment below. I choose my truth. Let us know what this shift means to you. Your story may awaken someone else's power. 6 mysterious signs you might possess a rare aura that few ever experience. As Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But what if who you truly are carries a rare, almost otherworldly energy that few can understand, let alone possess? In today's video, we'll explore 6 mysterious signs that point to an aura so rare, it silently commands attention and shifts the energy of every room you enter. These signs aren't just spiritual curiosities. They're roadmaps to deeper self-awareness, spiritual growth, and personal transformation. As you listen, reflect on your own journey. Do you recognize these traits within yourself? If so, comment below with "I feel the shift," or share your thoughts with our community. Let's begin this powerful unveiling together. 1. A presence that silently shifts the room. They don't chase attention, yet attention seems to orbit around them. There's no need for loud entrances or dramatic statements. Simply by walking into a room, something in the energy field recalibrates. Conversations pause. People glance without knowing why. It's not about beauty, charm, or charisma. Those things can be mimicked. This presence can't be. It's ancient. It's earned. It's the result of someone who has walked into the depths of their inner world, faced their shadow with unflinching honesty, and returned whole. Carl Jung called this spiritual metamorphosis individuation, the moment a fragmented self becomes unified not by rejecting darkness, but by integrating it. And in this unity, the aura becomes rare. Its power doesn't need validation. It doesn't beg to be seen. It simply is. Calm, grounded, immovable. This presence doesn't rise from perfection, but from the courage to be fully human. Those who carry this rare frequency often bear the weight of emotional history. They've been through spiritual awakenings that shattered illusions and burned away everything superficial. They've walked through betrayals, endured loneliness, and navigated seasons of not belonging. But instead of becoming hardened, they became clear. And it's this clarity that sharpens their energy like a blade of truth. They don't entertain small talk or ego games. They can sit in silence and still be felt. Their aura speaks louder than their voice ever could. And it's not because they want to be mysterious, but because they no longer need to explain themselves. Their inner peace has become their native language. Their healing has turned into spiritual wisdom. And their stillness has become a mirror, one that often makes others uncomfortable, because it reflects what they've avoided in themselves. In a world addicted to performance, rare aura people are a paradox. They don't perform. They are. They listen deeply. They move slowly. They observe without judgment. And when they do speak, their words feel like code soft, but unforgettable. You walk away from them changed, not because they tried to change you, but because their presence awakens something dormant in you. You remember who you are when you're around them. But this gift is double-edged, because just as they attract souls hungry for truth, they also repel those addicted to illusion. People either love them or fear them. There is rarely an in-between. And that's the price of spiritual clarity. It disrupts the status quo. It can't be controlled. It can't be manipulated. It's sovereign. These individuals are often misunderstood. Their silence is seen as arrogance, their solitude as sadness. But nothing could be further from the truth. They've simply stopped explaining their existence. They've stopped apologizing for their depth. They've stopped betraying themselves just to be liked. Instead, they've chosen alignment over acceptance, truth over comfort, and energy over appearances. They live by vibration, not obligation. They respond to the soul, not ego. And that's what makes them dangerous, not in the violent sense, but in the revolutionary one. Because their very presence exposes what is false, not with anger, but with undeniable authenticity. And in a world drowning in noise, they've become the quiet storm that changes everything. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the energy shift without saying a word? If you've experienced this silent power, share your story in the comments below so others can understand its mystery. If not, comment, "I will observe," to start becoming more aware of your own presence. Let's explore the rare aura within together. 2. People instantly open up to you. People don't just talk to you, they unravel. In grocery lines, cafes, workspaces, and quiet corners of life, strangers and loved ones alike seem to pour out their secrets, confessions, and emotions as if your presence somehow gives them permission to finally be real. It's not because you ask the right questions or know all the answers. It's because your aura holds a rare frequency that feels like truth itself. You don't push, pull, or judge. You simply exist with a kind of silent openness that mirrors back to people what they've been running from: grief they never processed, anger they never voiced, desires they were taught to suppress. And while that might feel confusing or even overwhelming at times, Carl Jung offered a powerful insight into this phenomenon through his concept of projection. When people encounter someone with a spiritually awakened presence, someone who has faced their own shadow and no longer hides behind illusion, they unknowingly project their hidden self onto that person. You become a mirror, not the kind that flatters or distorts, but one that reflects back what is true, raw, and unresolved. This is why people feel disarmed around you. Your energy doesn't just comfort them, it exposes what's underneath. It doesn't just calm the room, it rearranges it. Your spiritual development has fine-tuned your ability to hold space without absorbing chaos. You've likely walked through your own emotional fire, confronted your own darkness, and alchemized it into light. And now, whether consciously or not, people feel that. They sense your depth, your clarity, your refusal to live on the surface. And in a world addicted to noise and performance, that kind of authenticity is both magnetic and terrifying. Some will be drawn to you like moths to a flame, aching for the safety your presence provides. Others will resist you, distance themselves, or even act cold, not because you've done anything wrong, but because your energy threatens their illusions. This is the invisible burden of having a rare aura. You walk through life triggering transformation without saying a word. And that's why spiritual boundaries matter. Not every emotion you absorb belongs to you. Not every story needs to be carried. Just because people open their soul to you doesn't mean you're responsible for healing it. Your role is not to save, but to reflect. Not to fix, but to witness. This is the essence of true spiritual wisdom, not martyrdom, but mastery. So when someone says, "I don't know why I'm telling you this," take it as confirmation of your spiritual maturity. You're not just a safe space, you're a spiritual mirror. You awaken others simply by standing in your truth. Let your presence continue to be a portal for growth, but protect your own light fiercely. Because the deeper your aura reaches, the more intentional you must be about what and who you allow into it. This is the unseen path of spiritual development. Learning how to be a sanctuary for others without abandoning your own soul in the process. If people often open up to you without knowing why, comment below. I am in the flow of connection, because your rare aura might just be the reason. 3. Hyper-awareness of energetic undercurrents. You walk into a room, and before anyone says a word, you already know who's hurting, who's pretending, and who's barely holding it together. This isn't a trick, and it's not magic. It's the result of a deep inner intelligence, a form of spiritual wisdom that Carl Jung believed only a few ever fully develop. Your awareness stretches beyond the surface. You feel energy, mood shifts, unspoken tension, and repressed pain with stunning clarity. While others rely on facial expressions and tone of voice, you read between the silences, sensing what isn't said, noticing the emotional currents running beneath even the calmest conversation. This hyper-awareness is a hallmark of those with a rare aura, a presence that disturbs shallow waters, not because you're disruptive, but because you are awake in a world that thrives on numbness. But make no mistake, this level of spiritual perception doesn't come without a price. Because when you're constantly absorbing emotional data, social interaction can feel like energetic warfare. Small talk is exhausting. Fake smiles hurt. Crowded rooms feel like psychic noise. You don't just interact with people, you absorb them. And unless you've learned to regulate your boundaries, every conversation can leave you feeling like you've given too much. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Your rare aura stems from your willingness to explore your unconscious mind, to confront shadows most people avoid, and to integrate the parts of yourself that were once fragmented. This journey creates a field around you with an energetic frequency that others can sense but rarely understand. They may call you intense, mysterious, or even intimidating, but that's only because your presence reveals what they've worked hard to suppress. You serve as a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. People either evolve in your presence or run from it. And if you've spent a lifetime shrinking to make others comfortable, hiding your emotional depth to avoid judgment, or pretending not to notice what your intuition screams at you, then it's time to reclaim your gift. Your sensitivity is not a flaw. It's your compass. It allows you to see through manipulation, sense danger before it arrives, and connect on a soul level with those who are ready to meet you there. Spiritual awakening isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's simply realizing that you no longer have the tolerance to betray yourself for the sake of harmony. Sometimes it's knowing when to walk away without explaining your truth. And other times, it's choosing silence over performance, solitude over pleasing, and energy over words. Your intelligence lies in your discernment. You don't need proof to trust your instincts. The body knows what the mind can't articulate. You're not paranoid. You're perceptive. This is the art of energetic awareness, knowing when a room is off, when someone's smile doesn't reach their eyes, when someone says, "I'm fine," but their aura screams otherwise. You are fluent in the unspoken, and that's rare. But you must protect that ability with everything you have, because those who do not understand it will try to use it, drain it, or silence it. You don't need everyone to get you. You need to get yourself. And once you do, you'll stop explaining your energy and start choosing environments that honor it. Your rare aura is not just a feeling, it's a force, a frequency born of self-awareness, healed trauma, and spiritual intelligence. And those who truly see you won't be confused by your silence or threatened by your depth. They'll feel safe in your presence because you are one of the rare ones who listens with their soul. If this sign of hyper-awareness resonates with you, like the video, subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep uncovering the depth of Carl Jung's spiritual insights together. 4. You trigger people without saying a word. Just by being real in a world full of masks, you become a silent disruptor. Your authenticity shines so vividly that it naturally exposes everything that is fake or hidden around you. People don't always realize it, but your presence unsettles them, not because you are loud or demanding, but because your energy carries a frequency of spiritual truth that cannot be ignored. It speaks a language beyond words, vibrating with the power of someone who has faced their own shadows and embraced their whole self. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And when you live from that place of inner truth, you force people to confront what they've been avoiding in themselves. Some will find this magnetic. They will be drawn to you as if your light wakes something dormant within them. But others will feel threatened, even hostile, because you represent everything they've repressed. Your presence becomes a mirror they're not ready to look into. You don't have to preach, persuade, or perform. Your existence alone shakes the ground beneath their illusions. Jung warned that society fears wholeness because wholeness demands integration, and integration disrupts conformity. The modern world rewards masked success without depth, popularity without purpose, smiles without sincerity. But you refuse to play that game. Your spirit won't allow it. When others suppress their pain to keep the peace, you bring it to the surface by simply existing. That's the power of spiritual awakening. It sharpens your aura until it becomes a piercing light that reveals what others have hidden in darkness. And so, even if you say nothing, people feel something shift when you walk into the room. Your silence speaks, and it speaks volumes. You challenge others to be real, to stop performing, to meet themselves at a deeper level. And that, for many, is terrifying. So they may distance themselves, mock you, criticize your choices, or even try to make you doubt your path. But understand, this is not personal. This is energetic. You trigger people because your energy reveals their inner fragmentation. Still, your role is not to shrink. You were never meant to water yourself down to make others feel comfortable. You are here to expand, to stand as a living example of wholeness in a fragmented world. Every time you're misunderstood, every time someone turns cold or combative, know that your energy is doing sacred work. You are shaking their false foundations, not out of malice, but as a call to evolve. You are a mirror they didn't ask for, but deeply need. And while many will turn away, the ones who stay will grow. You are here to lead by energy, not by explanation. Your rare aura is not a burden. It is a spiritual signal, a quiet revolution that inspires others to return to themselves. So continue to be real. Continue to walk with grace and unwavering truth. Let your spiritual wisdom speak through your actions. Let your presence be a reminder that authenticity is not just powerful, it's necessary. If this message resonates with something deep inside you, repeat after me. I am receiving this message from the universe. It's speaking directly to my soul. I trust its truth completely. 5. Solitude becomes sacred. As your spiritual development deepens, you begin to notice a profound shift in how you relate to the world around you. The noise, the constant stimulation, and the need for external approval no longer satisfy you. You find yourself naturally distancing from superficial interactions that once filled your time. There's a quiet ache not of sadness, but of transformation as your soul begins to crave something richer than casual conversations and energy-draining environments. You no longer chase attention or validation because your energy is becoming more refined, more selective. The solitude that once felt like exile now becomes sacred ground. This isn't withdrawal out of fear. It's the necessary step for inner expansion. In solitude, you're no longer performing for the world. You're listening, healing, awakening. You're tuning into a frequency that most people are too distracted to hear. Carl Jung understood this when he emphasized that individuation, becoming who you truly are, requires stepping away from the collective noise. It's in that quiet where you meet the parts of yourself that have been waiting to be seen, not by others, but by you. What used to be labeled as isolation is now the womb of your transformation. You begin to understand that growth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the silent nights spent with your thoughts, the quiet mornings where you feel the pulse of the universe beating inside you, the deep moments of self-reflection where clarity cuts through confusion like a blade. And while others may interpret your stillness as disconnection, you know it's alignment. You feel your energy becoming magnetic, not because you're trying to be noticed, but because you're vibrating from a place of authenticity and spiritual clarity. You're not escaping the world. You're preparing to re-enter it with deeper awareness and power. Spirituality, at this level, is no longer a concept. It becomes your lifestyle. You begin to value your inner peace more than being understood. You protect your time, your space, your mind. You become deeply intentional about who and what you allow into your energy field. And in this sacred solitude, you start to realize that the most powerful presence you can have is the one that does not need to announce itself. This is the paradox of the rare aura. It doesn't shout, but it shifts rooms. It doesn't seek approval, yet it leaves impact. Solitude, therefore, is not a weakness to overcome, but a strength to cultivate. It's the crucible where your rare energy is tempered and your inner wisdom is born. In this space, you're not losing anything. You're gaining everything: spiritual strength, emotional resilience, and the clarity to walk your path without apology. This is where the real transformation happens, not in the spotlight, but in the sacred silence that only the brave are willing to embrace. If solitude has become a sacred part of your journey, you're not alone. Subscribe to spiritual wisdom and stay connected with others who understand the power of quiet transformation. Here, we honor rare auras, deep insights, and the beauty of spiritual awakening. Remember, your stillness is not emptiness. It's divine alignment. 6. You begin to see yourself differently. You stop seeing your difference as something to fix and begin to recognize it as sacred design, a deliberate mark of spiritual intelligence. You're not here to blend into a world that feels too loud, too shallow, or too disconnected from truth. Your aura has always been rare, not because you're trying to be unique, but because you've quietly chosen the road of inner truth when most people run from it. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And that's exactly what your energy does. It reflects a soul that has dared to look inward without flinching. You begin to realize you were never meant to play small, apologize for your presence, or mask your intensity. Instead of questioning why you see through the surface, feel things deeply, or sense what others cannot explain, you start to honor these gifts as signs of your spiritual awakening and your connection to something beyond the physical. Your aura isn't just different, it's disruptive in the most divine way. It confronts the falsehoods people live by. It stirs the unspoken. It reveals the hidden. You walk into rooms and shift the atmosphere, not because you demand attention, but because your energy exposes what's fake, what's unaligned, and what's asleep. This kind of presence isn't loud, but it's undeniable. It's not charisma, it's clarity. It's not dominance, it's depth. And the more you own that, the more others begin to feel something change in themselves when they're around you. Some will admire it, some will misunderstand it. But either way, your very existence becomes a mirror that forces others to confront what they've buried. And that's not something everyone is ready for. But this is where the sacred responsibility begins. You're not just here to shine, you're here to protect your light. You start setting boundaries not out of bitterness, but out of spiritual necessity. You no longer let guilt manipulate your kindness. You stop explaining your path to people who have no interest in understanding it. You honor your intuition more than the noise. You walk away from people who drain your energy, not because you don't care, but because you finally realize your frequency is not meant to be diluted. This is emotional mastery, spiritual wisdom, and energetic discipline, all wrapped into one rare sovereign presence. And as you protect your energy, you begin to radiate even more powerfully, not through force, but through presence. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable and start expanding into the fullness of who you are. You no longer seek permission to be seen because you understand now that your energy is the permission. Your aura whispers, you can be whole too. It speaks to people's unlived potential, their forgotten truths, their suppressed emotions. You become a walking awakening. And it's not about ego, it's about embodiment. You're not trying to impress, you're trying to remember. To remember who you were before the world told you to be less. To remember the version of yourself that always knew they were here for more. This is when you begin to live differently, speak differently, love differently. You realize you are no longer someone searching for worth. You are someone radiating it. And that, above all else, is why your aura is rare. Because while others are still trying to find themselves in the noise, You've chosen to become the quiet power that wakes others up. And remember, if any of these signs resonated with you, it's not by accident your journey towards spiritual awakening may already be unfolding. Carl Jung taught us that rare energy often comes from deep inner work and self-awareness. So, trust your intuition, honor your presence, and keep exploring the mystery of your own soul. If you found this video insightful, please like, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more content that supports your spiritual growth. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an awakening moment. Until next time, stay luminous. The dark truth. Why empaths draw people who secretly envy their light. The brighter the light, the darker the shadow. Carl Jung's words echo through the lives of every empath who has ever felt the weight of being misunderstood, envied, or drained by others. If you've ever wondered why your kindness attracts people who seem to secretly resent you, this message is for you. In today's video, we're diving deep into the hidden psychology behind why your light draws both admiration and silent hostility. This is more than just understanding others. It's a journey of spiritual wisdom and self-protection. Have you ever felt used, unappreciated, or energetically attacked despite your good intentions? Drop a comment below and share your experience. Your voice might be the light another empath needs to hear. Let's awaken together. 1. Empaths trigger shadow projection. Empaths unknowingly become targets of emotional projection, not because of anything they do wrong, but because their emotional light exposes what others have buried deep within their shadow. Carl Jung revealed that the brighter someone's soul shines, the more it reveals the darkness others carry, but refuse to face. People are drawn to the empath's compassion, authenticity, and deep sensitivity. But what begins as admiration can quickly turn into discomfort and even envy. That's because empaths activate an unconscious mirror, reflecting back everything others have suppressed: pain, shame, insecurity, or unresolved grief. In the presence of such emotional clarity, people can no longer hide behind their masks. Their shadow is called out not through confrontation, but simply by standing next to someone who is spiritually awake and emotionally alive. This dynamic creates a cruel paradox for the empath. On one hand, they are cherished for their warmth and ability to understand, but on the other, they are punished for it. The very same people who seek comfort from their light may simultaneously resent them for illuminating what they've long tried to forget. In a society that rewards emotional suppression and disconnection, the empath becomes the rebel soul, quietly defying the norm by choosing to feel, to heal, and to live from the heart. And in doing so, they disturb those who would rather not feel anything at all. This is the psychological pattern Jung called shadow projection, and it's a spiritual initiation. The empath is not here to be liked by everyone, but to embody a presence so honest that it awakens truth in others, even if that truth first comes wrapped in resistance. Spiritual awakening requires that empaths recognize this pattern for what it is, not a curse, but a calling. The rejection, jealousy, or manipulation they experience is often just a symptom of someone else's inner battle. Empaths must learn to stop internalizing these wounds and understand that being a source of discomfort is sometimes the first stage of being a catalyst. Just because someone dislikes you doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Often, it means you're doing something right. The key is to protect your energy, not by building walls, but by strengthening your awareness. Know who is draining you and why. Know when you are helping someone grow versus enabling their avoidance. Let your spiritual wisdom guide you, not your guilt. In a world craving emotional safety but fearing vulnerability, the empath stands as a paradox, both desired and rejected, both healer and threat. And yet, this is where their true power lies. The light of an empath is not passive, it is transformative. It does not only soothe, it reveals, it confronts, it awakens. Jung taught that we must become conscious of our shadow, or it will rule our life, and we will call it fate. Empaths don't just see through people, they help others see through themselves. And for some, that's terrifying. But for those ready to grow, it's the beginning of liberation. Have you ever noticed how your presence triggers strong reactions in others? If this insight into shadow projection resonated with you, share your experience in the comments so we can learn together. If you're just beginning to understand this truth, comment, "I'm ready to see the shadows clearly." And let's walk this path of spiritual wisdom side by side. 2. The pain of emotional authenticity. The more an empath grows through spiritual development and emotional authenticity, the more their presence becomes a silent challenge to those still running from themselves. Their light pure, unfiltered, and healing doesn't just shine, it exposes. It doesn't just comfort, it confronts. And this is where the paradox begins. People are drawn to empaths because of their warmth, their presence, their ability to hold space for emotions that others can't even name. Yet the very thing that attracts them becomes the thing they subconsciously resent. Carl Jung revealed that when someone is disconnected from their own emotional world, they often project their unacknowledged darkness onto others. So when an empath walks into the room, glowing with emotional truth and spiritual clarity, it activates a quiet war within those who have buried their pain. Suddenly, the empath isn't just a person, they're a mirror, and not everyone wants to look. These projections are subtle. It might look like a shift in tone, an offhand comment, a sudden distance. But what's really happening is psychological defense. Your emotional radiance awakens something in them. Grief, a regret, a longing they've long silenced. They may not even understand why they feel uneasy around you, but unconsciously, they start to punish you for the very light they once admired. It's not hatred, it's fear of being seen too deeply. And so, the empath begins to feel confused, drained, even betrayed by those they were only trying to love. This is the unspoken burden of spiritual awakening. The more you align with your truth, the more you outgrow roles, expectations, and even relationships that were rooted in false comfort. Your growth exposes others' stagnation, and without realizing it, you become a trigger, not because you've harmed them, but because your energy makes them feel everything they've numbed. But this pain has a purpose. It teaches you to stop seeking validation from those who haven't validated themselves. It teaches you to protect your energy not out of fear, but out of reverence. Carl Jung believed that those who survive this emotional crucifixion become something more alchemists of the soul, carriers of light that can't be dimmed by misunderstanding or envy. This is not a curse, it is your calling. As your spirituality deepens, you begin to see clearly. Not everyone is meant to walk with you, and not every gaze is safe to meet. You learn to discern the difference between admiration and dependency, between love and projection. You stop explaining your light and start embodying it. And though it hurts to be punished for simply being real, it also liberates you to become who you truly are, no longer a caretaker of others' comfort, but a guardian of your own truth. 3. The mirror trap and projection amplification. Empaths are not just sensitive souls. They are emotional mirrors, reflecting back the truth that others are too afraid to see in themselves. Their presence shines a light on what's hidden, buried, or denied in the hearts of those around them. And because of this, empaths often become unwilling participants in a spiritual paradox. The more light they carry, the more darkness they seem to attract. According to Carl Jung, people project their shadow, the unconscious, rejected parts of themselves onto others, and empaths are often the target. Why? Because the empath's emotional intelligence and spiritual authenticity silently challenge those who have suppressed their own inner world. This is the essence of what we now call the mirror trap. The empath doesn't have to say a word. Their very existence exposes others' emotional numbness, and what begins as admiration quickly turns into resentment, envy, or confusion. People who have lost touch with their feelings are often drawn to the warmth and safety of the empath's light. But once in its presence, they begin to feel discomfort. That light becomes too bright, too honest, too real. It makes them feel seen, not in the way they crave, but in the way they fear. They begin to blame the empath for the emotions stirred up inside them. This is projection amplification, a psychological and spiritual dynamic where others not only reflect their shadow onto the empath, but also intensify it. The empath becomes the emotional landfill where others dump what they can't process or admit. They are blamed for being too sensitive, too emotional, or too intense, when in reality, they're simply holding space for emotional truths others have long abandoned. The empath becomes a scapegoat for shame, guilt, rage, and unmet needs that have nothing to do with them and everything to do with the wounds others refuse to face. Carl Jung believed that this pattern could destroy the empath unless they wake up to what's really happening. Empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. But empathy with wisdom becomes spiritual power. The spiritually awakened empath recognizes the mirror effect and stops internalizing other people's reactions. They stop asking, "What did I do wrong?" and begin asking, "What part of this doesn't belong to me?" This shift in awareness is everything. It's how empaths evolve from victims of projection to masters of energetic clarity. It's how they stop dimming their light just to be tolerated and start owning it with intelligence and grace. When you finally understand that people project not because of who you are, but because of what they've refused to become, you stop shrinking. You stop explaining. You stop overgiving. And you start protecting your peace like a sacred temple. Because being an empath is not about absorbing. It's about reflecting with purpose. It's about becoming so rooted in your truth that no projection can distort your sense of worth. It's about understanding that your light isn't just a gift. It's a challenge to those still living in the dark. And the moment you fully embrace that, you no longer need anyone's permission to be who you are. You become emotionally sovereign, spiritually intelligent, and untouchable in your authenticity. If this insight into the mirror trap and projection amplification resonated with you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom and share your reflections in the comments below. Let's keep uncovering the deeper layers of Carl Jung's teachings and spiritual intelligence together. 4. 4 archetypes who attack empaths. Carl Jung understood a deep, painful truth about empaths. Their light often invites attack from those who have lost touch with their own. The empath, guided by spirituality and rooted in emotional wisdom, naturally reflects authenticity, depth, and inner truth qualities that threaten the fragile egos of those still trapped in the shadow. Jung outlined 4 archetypes who subconsciously lash out at empaths, not because empaths have done something wrong, but because their very presence reveals what others have denied within themselves. The first is the emotional critic, those who label empaths as too sensitive, not realizing that this sensitivity is actually spiritual intelligence in its rawest, most beautiful form. These critics grew up believing emotions were liabilities, not knowing that emotional suppression is the true weakness. When they encounter someone brave enough to feel deeply, to weep in front of the world, or speak from the soul, they become uncomfortable, not because the empath is flawed, but because the empath has something they lost long ago: the courage to feel. This plays out in modern life through mocking comments, subtle jabs, or attempts to harden the empath's heart. But feeling is not fragility. It is sacred power. The second archetype, the authenticity attacker, is triggered by those who live without masks. Empaths, in their spiritual awakening, have chosen truth over image. They laugh without pretense, cry without shame, and love without calculation. To someone whose identity is built on performance and perfection, this rawness is terrifying. The empath becomes a living mirror, reflecting all that the other person has buried: pain, insecurity, fear. And because they cannot face their own shadow, they attempt to silence the light that exposes it. The world today celebrates curated images and emotional control, but the empath lives outside that system. Their mere presence dismantles illusions and awakens hidden wounds. That is why the authenticity attacker will try to shame the empath's transparency, calling it too much, dramatic, or unprofessional. But in truth, it is the highest form of rebellion, to be real in a world addicted to falsehood. Then comes the vulnerability violator, who pretends to embrace the empath's openness, but ultimately weaponizes it. They encourage deep sharing, but only to later twist those confessions into shame or manipulation. This archetype thrives on the empath's trust, but once they have it, they violate it, then blame the empath for giving too much. It's a cruel betrayal, disguised as intimacy. In relationships, this is the partner who says, "You're too emotional," after encouraging honesty, or the friend who exposes a secret shared in confidence. But spirituality teaches us that vulnerability is not weakness. It's the path to wholeness. When someone abuses that path, it reveals their lack of emotional maturity, not the empath's naivety. The lesson here isn't to close your heart. It's to guard it with discernment. Let your heart remain open, but don't hand the key to those who haven't earned your trust. Lastly, the light dimmer is perhaps the most insidious of all. They don't directly attack the empath, they whisper, plant doubt, and subtly erode confidence. They say things like, "Are you sure you're not imagining it?" Or, "Maybe you're just overreacting." Their goal isn't to destroy the empath, they want to control them by shrinking their light just enough to feel superior. This is psychological manipulation wrapped in concern. The light dimmer fears the empath's full power, because that power cannot be dominated. In today's spiritual climate, where more people are waking up to their divine gifts, the light dimmer often appears as a romantic partner, mentor, or even a spiritual teacher who pretends to support you, but secretly hopes you never outgrow them. Jung's spiritual wisdom reminds us that anyone who tries to dim your light is doing so because your radiance exposes their own lack of inner fire. Your job is not to shrink, dim, or make others comfortable with your light. Your job is to expand, elevate, and awaken not just for yourself, but for the collective healing of humanity. 5. 3 dangers for empaths. Carl Jung warned that empaths, despite their rare emotional depth and compassionate nature, face 3 profound psychological dangers that often go unnoticed, but are spiritually devastating. The first is authenticity erosion. Empaths, in their desire to maintain harmony and avoid conflict, begin to suppress their truth, dim their natural radiance, and mold themselves into what others find acceptable. This self-editing doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds subtly, as they say yes when they mean no, laugh when they want to cry, and conform when their soul longs to rebel. They start to wear emotional masks, not because they lack strength, but because they feel too deeply and fear the pain of rejection. This erosion of authenticity cuts them off from their spiritual power and fractures their connection to their own soul, stunting their spiritual development and turning their empathy into a burden rather than a gift. The second danger, as Jung called it, is psychological self-betrayal. Empaths often absorb the distorted reflections of others who are uncomfortable with emotional vulnerability. These people may criticize the empath for being too sensitive, too intense, or too emotional. And over time, those criticisms become internalized. The empath begins to question their own worth, seeing their emotional sensitivity as a flaw instead of a spiritual strength. They betray themselves by believing that their feelings are wrong or excessive, and in doing so, they abandon the very wisdom that was meant to guide them. The result is a kind of emotional self-sabotage, where the empath turns their healing energy inward, not as nourishment, but as a weapon against themselves. Their light dims not because it fades, but because they no longer believe it is worthy of being seen. The final and most far-reaching danger is collective emotional stagnation. Jung believed that when empaths silence their gifts, the world becomes spiritually poorer. Empaths are the emotional visionaries of society, and when they retreat into emotional silence, the collective heart of humanity begins to shut down. Empathy is not just a personal trait, it is a spiritual responsibility. When empaths withhold their light out of fear, they withhold the very frequency that has the power to awaken consciousness in others. Without their insight, the world becomes disconnected, cold, and unable to heal. Every time an empath chooses silence over truth, comfort over courage, the ripple effect is enormous, dulling the emotional intelligence of the whole. Jung saw this not as a personal failure, but as a societal tragedy, because the transformation of humanity depends on those brave enough to feel deeply and love fully. For those who carry this sacred sensitivity, the message is clear. You were not made to blend into a numb world. You were born to bring light to it. Protect your authenticity like it's holy. Guard your emotional truth as if it were gold. Because in the realm of spirituality, your ability to feel deeply is not a weakness. It is your greatest offering to a world starving for awakening. If you've ever felt drained, misunderstood, or targeted for simply being yourself, you're not alone. Comment below. I protect my energy to affirm your boundaries and reclaim your light. 6. Jung's self-preservation protocol. Carl Jung, with his profound spiritual wisdom and psychological intelligence, offered empaths a powerful inner defense, a way to preserve their light in a world that too often mistakes their sensitivity for weakness. He understood that empaths, those who feel deeply and love sincerely, tend to attract people who unconsciously project their own unresolved pain and envy onto them. But projection, as Jung taught, is never truly about the empath. It's a psychological mirror, reflecting the emotional emptiness of the one who cannot bear to face their own inner wounds. So when someone is disturbed by your peace or resents your kindness, it's not your fault, it's their shadow speaking. To protect yourself, Jung urged empaths to become aware of this pattern and to stop internalizing what was never theirs to carry. You are not responsible for the healing others refuse to do. Equally important, he emphasized the need for energetic boundaries, subtle yet powerful filters that protect your emotional space. When you have no boundaries, your intelligence becomes blurred by noise, your compassion becomes a magnet for chaos, and your purpose gets drowned in emotional fatigue. Setting boundaries is not about building walls of isolation, but about honoring your soul's capacity. It's an act of spiritual clarity, deciding what energy you allow into your field and what must be lovingly turned away. You're not being cruel, you're being conscious. Because your energy is sacred, and not everyone deserves access to it. Jung also insisted that empaths must choose their relationships with precision and purpose. Not all connection is sacred. Some people are drawn to your authenticity only because it reminds them of the mask they're wearing. They may admire you in public, but compete with you in private. They may praise your light, but secretly wish to extinguish it. That's why you must observe, listen, and feel not just with your heart, but with your intuition. Emotional intelligence includes discernment. You must ask yourself, does this person celebrate my truth or silently resent it? Do they want me to grow or want me to stay small so they can feel comfortable? Jung's insight was clear. Those who cannot face their own soul will always try to distract you from yours. By living with spiritual awareness and applying this inner protocol, recognizing projection, mastering boundaries, and choosing aligned relationships, you are no longer merely surviving your empathy. You are wielding it as a conscious force. You step out of victimhood and into sovereignty. You stop bending for love and start standing in truth. You evolve into what Jung believed the world truly needs, a fully awakened empath who has turned their pain into purpose, their sensitivity into strength, and their soul into a sanctuary. 7. Real-life examples of empathic journeys. Carl Jung's deep exploration of empathy led him to recognize a powerful, often painful paradox. Those who feel most deeply are both the most gifted and the most vulnerable. He studied the lives of extraordinary individuals whose spiritual sensitivity illuminated paths of both transcendence and tragedy. Saint Francis of Assisi embodied what it means to transmute empathy into sacred purpose. Rather than becoming consumed by the world's suffering, he became a channel for divine peace. His ability to commune with nature and radiate compassion wasn't weakness. It was the result of profound spiritual mastery. His light wasn't protected by withdrawal. It was shielded by unwavering spiritual presence. In contrast, Vincent van Gogh's story reveals the devastating cost of unguarded sensitivity. His art was an extension of his soul, and every painting was a sacred cry for connection. But without spiritual boundaries or psychological grounding, the emotional intensity he carried turned inward and became self-destructive. Van Gogh's tragedy wasn't madness. It was unprotected brilliance in a world unprepared to understand it. Jung also placed himself within this continuum. He walked the tightrope between science and soul, logic and feeling, outer form and inner truth. He knew that in order to preserve his ability to serve truth, he had to protect his own emotional depths. To Jung, the spiritual awakening of the empath wasn't just about feeling, it was about becoming. As he once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But that privilege often comes with the cost of being misjudged, envied, or even isolated. The empath's journey is not one of weakness. It's a sacred trial of transformation. And the light they carry is not meant to be dimmed for others' comfort, but refined through conscious spiritual work. In modern life, empaths often find themselves caught between the desire to connect and the need to survive. They give, absorb, and feel, but without intentional boundaries, their gift becomes their burden. Jung's insight offers a path forward, not to harden the heart, but to strengthen the soul. Empathy, when harnessed with spiritual wisdom, becomes not just a trait, but a power. And the key is protection, not withdrawal. Discernment, not fear. You are not broken for feeling too much. You are called to evolve. If your emotional intensity has made you the target of misunderstanding or envy, it is not because you are weak. It's because your light unsettles the unawakened. Like Jung, like St. Francis, you must choose to preserve your sensitivity without allowing it to destroy you. That is the highest form of spiritual intelligence. To remain open, but rooted. Compassionate, but clear. Radiant, but untouchable. If these real-life empathic journeys resonated with your soul, comment below. I embrace my light to affirm your path. And if you're ready to stand in your truth, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. More deep spiritual wisdom is on the way. 8. Empaths and collective healing. Empaths are not just emotionally sensitive individuals. They are the emotional memory of humanity, the living embodiment of a consciousness that remembers what the world has forgotten, how to feel deeply, truthfully, and fully. Acting as bridges between humanity's emotional past and its spiritual evolution, empaths are not here to merely absorb the pain of others, but to awaken what has been silenced authentic feeling. Carl Jung's teachings echo this truth. When someone has developed a deep and radiant emotional life, they become a mirror that threatens the ego of those who have severed their connection with their own emotional reality. Empaths, then, do not just walk into rooms, they activate dormant truths. Their presence calls forth what others have repressed, and this awakening is often met with unconscious envy, projection, or resistance. People don't always hate the empath. They hate the parts of themselves that the empath reflects back at them. This dynamic is not personal, but archetypal. It is part of the collective shadow that surrounds emotional intelligence in a society obsessed with productivity, control, and superficial connection. But the empath's pain holds a deeper purpose. It is a spiritual initiation. To carry this level of emotional depth is to carry the emotional story of humanity. You are not just feeling your own wounds. You are touching ancestral grief, generational silence, collective numbness. Your nervous system is wired not only for empathy, but for emotional transformation. That is why people gravitate toward you, even if they don't understand you. They sense that your presence offers something rare: safety, honesty, and emotional clarity. And yet, because these qualities confront the illusions people live in, you are often resented for the same reasons you are loved. That is the paradox. The more you evolve spiritually and embody emotional truth, the more you threaten the false foundations others cling to. You are not just emotionally aware, you are spiritually disruptive. You are a quiet revolution. Still, the empath's role is not to fix others. It is to hold the frequency of truth so that others might rise to meet it. This is the heart of spiritual development, not the performance of goodness, but the embodiment of honesty. You are the pulse of what is real in a world addicted to the mask. That is why your presence is powerful, even if your voice shakes. And while your light may provoke the envy of those who have yet to begin their healing, that same light becomes a compass for those who are ready to return to themselves. You teach by being. You heal by feeling. You lead by surrendering. And even when you are drained or dismissed, your existence itself is an act of service, a sacred reminder that feeling is not weakness, it is wisdom. In the silence of your pain, in the solitude of your path, you are doing something profound. You are restoring emotional truth to a world that has forgotten how to cry. That is your mission, not to be understood by everyone, but to stay loyal to your own inner knowing. You are not too sensitive. You are precisely calibrated to help awaken a new emotional frequency on this planet. That is what makes you irreplaceable. That is what makes your light so disruptive and so necessary. Through your spirituality, your spiritual development, and your commitment to feeling the fullness of life, you become the medicine the world doesn't yet know it needs. 9. Pitfalls on the empath's path. Jung's revelations about the empath's journey offer a piercing look into the psychological traps that sensitive souls often fall into, not because they are weak, but because they are deeply alive in a world that has gone emotionally numb. He warned first about the urge for revenge when empaths, after enduring misunderstanding and emotional wounding, retaliate in subtle or overt ways. But vengeance doesn't free the empath. It entangles their energy in the very chaos they wish to escape. Then comes the illusion of emotional superiority, where the empath begins to view themselves as more evolved or morally elevated than others. This is not true spiritual wisdom, but a defense mechanism masking hidden pain. Next is the trap of isolation, where the wounds inflicted by others convince the empath that solitude is the only safety. But isolation, when rooted in fear rather than intention, can slowly turn into spiritual imprisonment. And perhaps the most heartbreaking of all is the dimming of one's own light. Empaths often shrink themselves, dulling their vibrancy, hiding their gifts just to avoid judgment, envy, or rejection. They silence their intelligence, their spiritual insight, their truth, not because they lack it, but because the world has failed to receive it. Carl Jung's most transformative insight is that empathy itself is not the problem, disconnection is. Empaths are not broken. They are simply operating on a frequency the modern world has forgotten how to honor. The world isn't too loud for you. It's too disconnected from its own heart. Your emotions are not flaws to fix. They are spiritual signals guiding you toward meaning, truth, and connection. The very sensitivity others criticize is the same gift that allows you to read the unseen, feel the unspoken, and sense the sacred. And while this can make you a target for projection, envy, or misunderstanding, it also means you carry something powerful, emotional intelligence that awakens others. But wisdom means sharing this light with discernment. Not everyone deserves your raw truth. Not everyone can hold your depth without trying to control or distort it. Sharing wisely means protecting your energy like gold, recognizing that your presence is a gift, not a given. Empaths are not too much. They are often just surrounded by people who feel too little. Your intensity is not a threat. It's a reflection of your authenticity. And if you've been made to feel ashamed for loving deeply, sensing too strongly, or speaking truth too clearly, it's because your light exposes what others have buried. Jung believed that when empaths learn to navigate these traps without betraying their essence, they become alchemists, transforming pain into power, wounds into wisdom. So don't dim your light. Don't retreat from yourself. Don't silence your soul to keep others comfortable. Stay radiant. Stay alive. Stay wise. Because the world doesn't need more numbness. It needs your light, offered with clarity, power, and spiritual intelligence. Thank you for joining us on this deep journey into the hidden dynamics of empathic energy and shadow projection. If today's message resonated with your soul or helped you see your own experiences more clearly, don't keep it to yourself like this video. Share it with someone who needs this truth and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom so you never miss a revelation that could change your life. Make sure to tap the notification bell so you're the first to receive our upcoming insights inspired by Carl Jung and spiritual awakening. And before you go, leave us a comment. My light is not a threat, it's a gift. Let's keep shining together.